Hi, it's Lauren Stock. I'm answering Hannah Hirschi's question. Do you think it's fair for Britain to want their cake and eat it too? Or is what they're doing by leaving the membership and still having a say in how the Eurozone and EU will affect them reasonable? I do not think this is a case of Britain wanting to have their cake and eat it too. The heart of the issue is the legitimacy process, as was highlighted by Bellamy and Castiglione. Britain's overriding concern is democratic in nature. They're struggling against an organization that is supposed to and purports to advocate for liberal democratic principles, at least externally. This is nothing nor capricious for Britain. There has been conflict ever since the '92 adoption, even before, of the Maastricht policy that blossomed in 2011 with the failed motion to try to have the first referendum on Brexit. But democratic processes imply that there's a back and forth of accommodation of interests. Well, Andrew Gamble in the article Better Off Without Britain showcases this with David Cameron in 2006 saying, hey, let's knock it off with this year of nonsense. And yet in 2011, there he is before the EU presenting issues for consideration, seeking for concessions in the give and take. And yet he's stonewalled by the old guard of the European Economic Community, who did not recognize him at that point as the voice of moderation. The EU is pursuing this federalist ideal, and they did not divine what it signified. Well, Bellamy and Castiglione point out that an idealistic federalism will weaken rather than strengthen legitimacy. Legitimacy will be enhanced only by democratic mechanisms that foster rather than restrict such dialogues. You see, Britain wanted to join the Eurozone without making it part of the European treaties because they felt once they were committed, they didn't know if they would be heard out. Even during Thatcher's time, Britain wanted to join and integrate more than economic zone with standardized regulations, but they were seeking to avoid what had become a practice of the European Union mandating through its institutions its positions and trying to sidestep debate. Bellamy and Castiglione again point out that the EU's inadequate democratic arrangements prevent it from offering the input legitimacy of government by the people. Well, an attempt by the EU to stifle or sidestep internal democratic debate, Cameron in the UK saw this as an extension of their tendency to override member concerns via EU institutional mandate. Well, again, in the Bellamy article, he cites that the tensions that are currently present within the EU largely stem from attempts to block and circumnavigate such dialogues. Well, even the 1992 failure of the ERM Accords saw economic growth for Britain. They know that diplomacy is part of having an influence back and forth with the EU, not trying to have the cake and eat it too. Very possibly it might be best for the UK to become an associate and still have influence and yet exercise sovereignty.